Just the beginning of the summer, but we are seeing the start of a real gas problem.
It's Madison Allworth of the Fox Business Network. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Are you looking for job opportunities? That's perfect. Taiho is a company based in Korea that provides opportunities for people to work at production sites in the United States. They offer a wide variety of jobs that may suit you. Come and check it out. For more information, visit www.gotomainland.com or go to their office at the old iConnect building or call 671-648-9788. What are you waiting for? Go grab that opportunity and fly out to the mainland.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here we go on the last day of the week for another exciting, elucidating episode of Tall Tales. Be a little bit empathetic for Tony, for Jose and I. We're going to have 2 whole days of no Tall Tales. We won't be back until 4 o'clock Monday afternoon. It's going to be tough on us, but we've done it before. We'll make it. But for right now, we got 2 whole hours of Tall Tales ahead of us. Nothing could be better. So let's start right out with Jemmy Ikotny. I'm not even going to touch the Daily News so-called headline editorial today. It's nope. Not even close to being an editorial. What I will do instead is read the column from the Post by Father Heisel. I call him Hetzel. I guess he calls himself Heisel. And here's what Father Heisel says. Here yesterday, gone today. Whatever happened to the good old Cleveland Indians? This was a baseball team I rooted for as a kid growing up in Buffalo, the city on the opposite end of Lake Erie. It's true that during the 1950s, the Indians usually lost out to the loathed New York Yankees by the end of the season. But that was okay. There was always next year. Wait till next year. Apparently, Indians became a forbidden nickname along with the team logo of a smiling Indian with a single feather in his headdress. They are now lamely known as the Cleveland Guardians. I wonder if they specialize in estate planning and probate. The Cleveland Guardian. What a lame name for a baseball team. Who cares if the old name and logo were intended to honor one of the early stars of the team, a Native American who was a fan favorite long before we ever started sorting out what was proper and what was not in today's woke culture. But it doesn't end there. The list of politically incorrect terms grows ever longer these days with the recent addition of squaw, the word that many of my friends would casually use for their wives. Is this really a slur on the Native American people? It's not just terms, but famous people have had their statues toppled in recent years. One example that especially bothers me is Father Junipero Serra, the Franciscan who founded many of the historic California missions. Half of the names in California seem to have been borrowed from these missions. Think of San Francisco, Santa Clara, Santa Barbara, San Diego. What is it that drove the group of self-righteous activists to tear down the statue of the man who was once considered the apostle of California? Could it have been that he worked to gather the local tribes who formerly had wandered place to place into a fixed settlement? This may have been contrary to their traditional culture, but it was in keeping with the mission strategy of, quote, reduction that was common among Spanish missionaries at the time. The strategy was intended to provide good pastoral care for the local folks, not to enslave them. Is it fair to call the missionary a colonizer? No, I got to stop here for a second, Jose. What a dumb question. Is it fair to call a missionary a colonizer? What has fair got to do with it? You call anybody you don't like a colonizer. You call anybody you don't approve of a colonizer. You call anyone who will not go along with your systemic rice agenda, obviously a colonizer. Yeah, is it fair to call a missionary a colonizer? Come on, Father. I'm surprised that Canisius High School, the Jesuit school in Buffalo that I attended, wasn't forced to surrender the name attached to all our sports teams, Crusaders. Oh, that's Islamophobe, right? Islamophobic. We all know the evils that are associated with the medieval crusades, whatever their original purpose might have been. What's the purpose of all this? Is this intended to be a cultural and historical cleansing? It would appear that the ban is imposed on those persons judged guilty by today's standards of some crime. And I've explained it before. I attach a label to it, presentism. And it's an important element of Black Lives Matter. It's an important element of critical race theory. You find a historical event that wouldn't square with today's manners, morals, and ethics. And because it doesn't, you condemn it. And then you condemn the people involved and say that things will never be the same as long as these folks are around. Presentism. To judge from those already moved for their pedestal, it doesn't matter how much good the individual has done overall. All it takes is one fatal flaw by today's code to disqualify a person from an honored status. I keep wondering how long it will be before the Jefferson Memorial or the Washington Monument will be leveled. Both slaveholders. After all, Thomas Jefferson had a child by his black mistress. Now, I got to stop here and tell you, Father, that ain't true. That's the so-called Sally Hemings myth, and it has been thoroughly debunked by DNA examinations of heirs of descendants of Sally Hemings and of living Jeffersons. Thomas Jefferson did not father any of Sally Hemings' children, but it's another one of those that The facts, you know, the narrative is so good, who would want to check the facts? George Washington was well known for his dalliances. Maybe he's a very truthful guy. Even back in my younger days when we saw a sign on a landmark proclaiming Washington slept here, we used to joke about adding the name of the young lady he had slept with. Must we really buy into this all or none view of people in which they are tagged as either saints or sinners? Then, too, there are the icons and names that are judged offensive to certain groups today. I can understand banning the N-word, which was used from early on. I guess Father doesn't have the word get-go in his vocabulary. I'll help him out there. Which was used from the get-go as a put-down. But squaw or Indian, is the use of these words truly demeaning to Native Americans? We thought the Inquisition was bad, or the French Revolution. The first was a heavy-handed institution charged with forcefully correcting erroneous thinking. The second was a misguided movement to stamp out a country's past. What about this modern-day attempt to rewrite history according to a new standard? I guess Father doesn't listen to the show and doesn't understand cultural racism or cultural Marxism. Can't we be left with some of our cherished figures, whatever their faults, and honor their real achievements? What about giving us the benefit of the doubt and letting us retain the old names and images we've held dear for so long? If rejecting this is a critical part of the woke culture, then let me claim to be proudly asleep. At least I still have the names I fondly remember and the persons that I honor to this day. Well, good going, Father. You picked the right target, a target that is frequently assailed here on Tall Tales. Talking about the names, the mascot names for teams. If you look at it, the Braves, the Boston Braves, the Cleveland Indians, the
Washington Redskins.
The Washington Redskins. Every one of these was chosen, at least in the imagery, because people wanted to characterize the teams in the same way they characterized the courageous, brave Indians. So there wasn't anything derogatory about it. These are folks we admire.
The Washington Redskins were purposely named Redskins because the Indian, the Native American who they consulted and wanted to honor, said that warriors didn't describe his tribe. Redskins was. But it was strangely that a long-tiered nephew or grandnephew of his is the one who protested this.
Sure.
But Redskins was not a name given from the team. It was a name given to the team.
Well, and here's something else. You know, we talk about red and yellow, black and white. Well, if you've ever been around Native Americans, you know that they're not red people. And that term came from the paint that Native American warriors put on their faces, their so-called war paint.
That's what he was honoring.
Yeah. And that's where the term redskin came from. Not because it was the color of somebody's skin. So it's once again where the cultural racism, the whole woke phenomenon, and presentism has been very successful in destabilizing our world and creating chaos to clear the way for the Marxist paradise that not a whole lot of people really want, but a whole lot of useful idiots have bought into and are going along with. And they've been very, very successful up until this point. Okay, so much for Jimmy and Cudney. Let's see what we got on the card for this afternoon. I've got Manuel Cruz versus Bob. I really don't have anything new to add to it, Manuel Lujan Cruz is the person who wrote the book report for his classes down in New Zealand. But I'm going to just spend a little bit of time on it. And the reason is it's kind of like when you're driving down the highway and you see an automobile accident, you know you should just keep driving and concentrating on your driving. But you can't help but turn your head and look, right, Jose?
Can't help.
It's the same phenomenon.
Yeah. You see a mess, you got to look at the mess.
Yeah.
And there's like 147 pages of mess.
Exactly. And then next I've got Maria Hernandez versus Vista Del Mar. This folds right into Public Law 36-34 and allows me to bring forward my writ of I told you so. I've petitioned for a writ of I told you so many times here, and now my writ has been granted. And then next on the agenda is truth, as you were on the card, truth versus agenda, men versus women, Bavacqua versus us, pride versus the United States Marine Corps. Now, even the word pride has been hijacked from us, right? You know, I suspect that many of the guys that I served with, the reason they joined the Marine Corps wasn't because they sat down and figured out, well, I like the benefits, or the bases are located in nice locations, or several of the MOSs make a lot of sense. I suspect an awful lot of them were attracted by the recruiting posters. You know, those Marines in the snappy dress blue uniforms with the white covers. And then the logos, the Marine Corps builds men. Of course, you can't say that anymore, right? The few, the proud, the Marines. And here
Them Marines?
The few, the proud, the Marines. And now here we are with Pride Month. They even stole the word proud from us. Yeah, so I got that on the card. And then I've got Schumer versus Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. And if there's time, I'm going to defang this January 6th hearing. Is it on tonight or was it last night?
They started, it's going to start tonight. It already started in the States, of course.
Yeah.
But I think if it's going to be broadcast, it'll be tonight.
Yeah. So I want to spend a little time on that also. Okay, starting right out with Hernandez versus Vista Del Mar. The Hybrid Land Use Commission, which is being asked to approve the plans for a $600 million hotel, water park, and condominium development near Two Lovers Point, failed to meet Thursday because the public was unable to access the online meeting. No! The tentative development plan for Tumuning Vista Del Mar project was the only application on the commission's agenda. The meeting will be rescheduled as soon as possible, complying with the public notice requirements of the open government law, according to the commission. The law requires agencies, boards, and commissions to give 5 days' notice of public meetings, with a second public notice at least 48 hours before the meeting starts. The commission issued public notices for Thursday's meeting, inviting residents to attend using Zoom meeting platform or to watch the meeting on the Department of Land Management's YouTube channel. However, the published information for Zoom was incorrect. So residents who wanted to provide live comments were unable to join the meeting. Well, there you go. This is not an oh, by the way type things, folks. You guys that are doing meetings. So then the rest of this article talks in terms of what this development consists of. And let's see. And we skip over to near the end, a subheading, harmful project. Maria Hernandez, and then the word may comes after Maria Hernandez, and it's capitalized. Now, I don't know if we're dealing with the Crystal Paco San Augustine, also known as Crystal Paco, phenomenon, or may shouldn't have been capitalized, meaning that it's tentative. But anyhow, I think it's the same Maria Hernandez because it's a Proteji Latexan protest. So perhaps Maria Hernandez has taken a husband. I shouldn't say that. The fact that she may be married doesn't mean she's got a husband. Maria Hernandez, representing active group Proteji Latexan in February, told the Tamuning Municipal Planning Council her organization opposes the, quote, harmful project and plans to challenge it every step of the way. The village council in April issued a resolution supporting the project, provided developers do not request additional zoning variances, and so on. So Maria Hernandez probably doesn't listen to Tall Tales, but if she does, you should take a look for the agenda of the rescheduled meeting. I've got it right here in front of me. A special meeting of the Hybrid Land Use Commission via Zoom will be held on Friday, June 17 at 1:30 p.m., etc. Here's the agenda. Number 1, roll call. Number 2, approval of minutes, Thursday, May 12. Number 3, old business, none. Okay, got that part right. New business, A. 2030-31B, Vista Del Mar LLC is requesting a tentative development plan for a proposed hotel resort with water park, etc., etc. Got that part right. 5, administrative and miscellaneous matters. Do you know what they're going to be discussing, Jose? Administrative matters like firing the director?
Nope.
Miscellaneous matters? That's no better than new business. So, Maria, if you're listening, there you go.
Denied.
The meeting, everything decided at the meeting is void because they screwed up the agenda. All right, moving right along here. Next on the agenda is truth versus the agenda. And this is something I got out of the National Review, and it deals with the Daily Wire's new documentary, What is a Woman? Let's take a short break and we'll come back to that burning question, what is a woman?
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, so going back to Father Hazel and your post that he describes the Crusades in woke terms, right? Because the crusade, somebody from Wokistan would say anyone who celebrates the Crusades is obviously anti-Muslim, right? whereas Christians see the Crusades as an attempt to put the holiest places of Christendom back under Christian control, which seems right.
Same with the Inquisition. It happened only in Spain.
Yeah.
It wasn't institutionalized along the church, just that location.
Yeah. Okay, so next item here is Truth versus the Agenda. It comes from National Review, and it is sort of a review of the Daily Wire's video called What is a Woman, which I'd really like to watch, but I'm not smart enough to be able to order it online. I hate that when companies do that, and you got to click on this, and you got to go to that, and unless you're a cybernetic engineer, you really can't watch the darn thing.
And a lot of major distributors refuse to put it on any other kind of medium, so it does make it very difficult.
Yeah. But here's a summary. And this is a summary by a guy named Dr. Patrick Grzanka, who speaks at Westminster College. And here's what he said. Who knew that the best way to expose transgender ideology is not to focus on its harms, but on its falsehoods? The central claims of transgenderism aren't true. Once you're prepared to confront that publicly, trans activists have nowhere to hide. In fact, most can't define what they mean by woman, let alone offer a defense. This is the main takeaway from the Daily Wire's new documentary, What is a Woman?, starring Matt Walsh, who is a husband and father of 4. Though he's better known as a conservative provocateur, in the documentary, Walsh plays the role of an ordinary man trying to better understand a new idea his children will inevitably encounter. Walsh travels across the United States, then further afield to Africa, speaking with a therapist, a surgeon, a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, trans-identified people, ordinary citizens, tribesmen in search of truth, a Supreme Court nominee, and a biologist. The results are both hilarious and terrifying. His first interview is with Gert Comfrey, a gender-affirming therapist. Quote, I like scented candles. I've watched Sex and the City, Walsh said. So how do I know I'm not a woman? Comfrey nods and smiles. Matt, that question right there, that question is when it's asked with a lot of curiosity, right? That's the beginning of a lot of people's gender identity journey. I guess so. It reminds me of this kid in class, and the teacher asks the kid a question, and the kid says, well, teacher, I didn't do my homework, so I don't think, and the teacher interrupted the kid and said, Susie, is that all you can say is like? And Susie said, I guess so. There was a time, though, the whole Valley Girls thing, when it was cool to say about every third word.
Frank Zappa. Remember that song, The Valley Girls? But not now. It's, 2022?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe he identifies as a Valley Girl.
Maybe.
But I can see thousands of men in their bathrooms getting rid of scented candles right now.
Yeah. Interesting. Throughout the interview, Comfrey seems not to notice Walsh's skepticism. Indeed, what the interviews with trans ideologues reveal is that few have ever faced meaningful challenge. This was evident in the exchange between Walsh and Dr. Patrick Grzanka. He's not the author. He's one of the characters. Dr. Patrick Grzanka, professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies at the University of Tennessee. Professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies. When is the world coming to?
Something's been omitted.
Yeah. And this is at Tennessee. I've got relatives in Tennessee, and I go there fairly frequently. My granddaughter was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky for several years, which is Tennessee, actually, notwithstanding its name. And I like Tennessee. Good people. They're common sense, ordinary folks. And that they put up with this in their university. So some dialogue. Walsh, I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth. Grzanka, yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language, like getting to the truth. Again, in social life. Walsh, why is that uncomfortable? Grzanka, because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. Walsh, the truth? Grzanka, and if you keep probing, we're going to stop the interview. Walsh, if I probe what the truth is? Grzanka, you keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. Walsh.
Wait, what?
Walsh, how is the word truth condescending and rude? Grzanka, why don't you tell me what your truth is? And you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up. Tell me what your truth is. This is classic systemic racism. Exactly. Walsh, what my truth is, well, I don't really think I have a truth. I think there's just the truth, the reality. And so we should begin by trying to figure out what that reality is. Walsh asked Grzanka if she can define the word woman. And here's what she says. For me, it's a really simple answer, and it's a person who defines as a woman. Was it third grade? Bobby, you can't use the word you're defining in a definition. You know, I told you that last year when you were in third gradeが You still haven't learned anything. You can't use the word you're defining in the definition. Grzanka says, but what are they identifying as? Walsh replies, as a woman. But what is that? As a woman. Isn't that a circular definition? Grzanka is not the only person trapped in this cycle of nonsense. On the streets of New York City, Walsh asks a man in a neon leotard who says, a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman. And now, if anybody is smart enough to wear a neon leotard knows what a woman is. You could bet your bottom dollar on that. When Walsh asks what that is, the man says, I don't know. In a debate with Walsh on Dr. Phil, a feminine, bearded man finds himself in the same dead end. Some aren't even willing to try offering definitions. For instance, when Walsh tells Democratic Representative Mark Takano that some women have really bought into the rumor that only men have penises and therefore want single-sex spaces and asks, how do you respond to that? Takano says he's mystified that Walsh's question wasn't on trans people's basic right to live. Takano cuts the interview short. I just wanted to know what a woman is, Walsh says as Takano walks off set. And you're not going to find out, a Takano staffer replies. This guy is a Democrat representative, probably in the state legislature. And you're not going to find out.
That showed him.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Absolutely. Walsh interviews Michelle Forcier, a pediatrician and a professor at Brown University. Forcier, a specialist in advanced contraception and abortion.
Is that what they're calling abortion now?
Advanced contraception and abortion. 2 items in her specialty. She's a pediatrician specializing in advanced contraception and abortion.
So far, she has no patience.
Well, she's a pediatrician.
But she is advanced contraception and abortion. She has yet to produce any patients.
Yeah. She tells Wealth, your spawn don't make you male. It's a constellation. Walsh pushes back. In reality, in truth, getting nowhere, he gives the example of how sex is observable in animals. For example, we know a chicken laying eggs is a female. Forcier replies, does a chicken have a gender identity? Can a chicken cry? Can a chicken commit suicide? The fact that they lay eggs, nothing to do with it.
I've seen some who have not crossed that road successfully.
Forcier suggests that even very small children can discover a gender identity that's not congruent with their sex assigned at birth. Walsh asks if she's ever met a 4-year-old who believes in Santa Claus. She says she has. Quote, maybe this is someone who has a tenuous grasp on reality. Walsh suggests, since you know Santa Claus isn't real, to that child, they are, meaning he is. Forcier replies, smiling. Perhaps Forcier also has difficulty distinguishing fantasy from reality, because if the child thinks Santa Claus is real, then maybe he's real. Most disturbing are Walsh's interviews with ordinary people on city streets. If it's your reality, it's truly none of my business, says one woman in Hollywood. Walsh asked whether she'd be willing to accept somebody else's truth that she doesn't know exists. She said she would. On the streets of New York City, Walsh asked a group of women and girls what a woman is. They giggle. We're all women. So what is that? They reply, that's hard. Yeah, it's a stumper. Women at the Women's March seem no better informed. Of course, not everyone is confused. Walsh interviews Don Sucher, owner of Sucher & Sons Star Wars shop in Washington State. Sucher went viral after he was caught on video having a confrontation with his local trans-identifying politician after he posted a sign in his shop window saying, just out, Dr. Seuss's new book. If you're born with a dick, you're not a chick. Walsh asked how he knew the politician in question wasn't a woman. Common sense, Sucher replied. What about trans people's feelings? Quote, I don't give a shucks about their feelings. I'm old, he said. He's not a scientist. He's not a gender studies major. How does he know that he's a man, Walsh asked. I guess because I've got to fill in the blank. And in Nairobi, Walsh meets with some tribesmen. He watches them slaughter a goat and eats raw kidney. A tribeman explains, a man has a penis, a woman has a vagina. Now that just shows you these folks in Nairobi, Kenya need a whole lot of university study and exposure and tutoring and come up with an answer like that. And what about a woman with a penis? Laughter. The tribeman says, a man has a duty and a woman has a duty. A man cannot do the duty of a woman and a woman cannot do the duty of a man. While different cultures will disagree about the social applications of this statement, the reproductive element is as universal as it is immutable. Though Walsh includes testimony from those harmed by gender ideology, He does so with truth front and center. He talks with female athletes such as Selena Soule, the high school runner in Connecticut displaced by young men who claim to be women. Scott Nugent, a female transsexual enduring the devastating and potentially life-shortening consequences of transition surgeries. A father in Canada who did jail time for publicly, quote, misgendering his 12-year-old daughter while trying to stop her state-sponsored chemical castration. How can this whole thing be happening? Marianne Grossman, a psychiatrist specializing in child and adolescent psychiatry, says there are masculine girls. You know what we used to call masculine girls when I was a kid, Jose? Tomboys. And there were some tomboys in my hometown, and they were good softball players, and they got along fine with the boys. Nobody made fun of them, and all of the tomboys that I remembered grew up to be pretty nice-looking chicks. You know, it was a stage, and they outgrew it. But even after they outgrew it and would get dolled up to the nines to go to the junior prom, they still knew how to throw a baseball like a boy.
There's a quote from Bill Maher. It says something about this. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God no one scheduled me for eye removal and peg leg surgery.
Good quote, yeah. Yeah, and thank goodness our friend Jeff, yeah, there you go. Jeff Pleadwell also escaped this fate worsened. Yeah. And he's even worked on his vocabulary a little bit, but you got to catch him early in the day. How can this whole thing be happening? Marianne Grossman, a psychiatrist specializing in child and adolescent psychiatry, said, there are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we going to do about that? Carve them up? Jordan Peterson asks. In a recent interview with Piers Morgan, the women's rights activist Kelly J. Keene said she doesn't care being called transphobic if that's the price of speaking the truth about sex. Indeed, the entire mass intimidation campaign collapses as soon as people refuse to go along with the lie. So what is a woman? The answer is given by Ms. Walsh, an adult human female, nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, I was so glad when I stumbled across this when I was doing my mining at 6 o'clock this morning, because it is dangerous. It has really taken over, you know. Okay, next we've got Bavakwa versus Us. And this is his weekly dose of independence rhetoric. Let's take a short break.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Are you looking for job opportunities? That's perfect. Taiho is a company based in Korea that provides opportunities for people to work at production sites in the United States. They offer a wide variety of jobs that may suit you. Come and check it out. For more information, visit www.gotomainland.com or go to their office at the old iConnect building or call 671-648-9788. What are you waiting for? Go grab that opportunity and fly out to the mainland.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Here's Bonnie Suba. As a tomboy, I mowed lawns during high school. I helped my dad, work on cars or things around the house, but still ogled every tough guy at school. Katie Knapp is about, 3-4 years older than I was. Katie Knapp was a tomboy. And she was a great softball player, etc. I don't remember how many kids she had, but the classic tomboy. Okay, Bavakwa, Bavakwa, Congress and the UN. One form of advocacy does not prevent the other. Now he's created a false conflict here once again to jabber about independence. Is what it amounts to. One of the biggest conceptions about Guam and the United Nations is the idea that advocating at the international level means not advocating at the national level, meaning in D.C. You will, for example, often hear the refrain, we shouldn't be going to the UN, we should be going to Congress. Well, I could give them a third destination myself, Jose. It's kind of hard to get a ticket there while you're still alive, but the problem with this idea is that it assumes one form of advocacy precludes the other, meaning if you're going to the UN, you can't also be going to Washington, D.C. Well, you can, provided that you got connections at DOA and they'll issue the necessary vouchers and per diem for you to stay in the fancy hotels. When Felix Camacho was governor, there was close to no engagement on issues of political status, locally, nationally, or internationally. Reminder, Felix is running for governor. Let me read that sentence again. When Felix Camacho was governor, there was close to no engagement on issues of political status, locally, nationally, or internationally. Despite whatever distortions you might read or hear, these trips did not ask for Guam to be liberated from U.S. control or seek independence from U.S. money. Instead, the focus has always been on highlighting where U.S. is falling short in terms of meeting the needs of the territories. Well, if you're doing that in Washington, you're doing just exactly what I'm saying you should be doing. But don't be sending your stooges over there to badmouth the United States. Eddie Calvo talked about how U.S. immigration policies were stifling construction and development in Guam by limiting foreign labor to the island. Leon Guerrero's administration has talked about the lack of consultation with the local community over the military buildup.
That's kind of stretching it.
It really is. And, of course, Eddie Calvo really should have gone to New York, to the United Nations, to talk about this foreign labor. Yeah, it would have done a lot of good there.
Yeah, because immigration is about another country.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean...
So it has to be UN.
This is classic Bavakwa, yeah. Both administrations expressed frustration about the apathy of the U.S. over dealing with fundamental issues about Guam's political status. Fundamental issues like what? Guam should become a state. Guam should become independent. You see, Jose, what this really comes down to is this. Bavakwa knows that there's only one different status that's possible, and that's independence. So the only two real choices are that, independence or hitching up our belts and staying in unincorporated territory of the United States and going to Congress and attempting to improve our lot in the American family. But he can't come out and say that.
Does he feel exhausted from having to put on this facade of all these different options when we know that there is only one.
Yeah, he must. Okay, but these trips to the U.S. have not, to UN have not, as you were. These trips to the UN have not precluded or prevented regular trips to D.C. in any way. Both administrations have regularly testified before Congress and met with federal officials. One form of advocacy doesn't prevent the other. They, in fact, can enhance and support each other. Lieutenant Governor Josh and Melvin Wonpat, the executive director, have both testified at the UN and about the possibility of a UN visiting mission being invited to Guam to see firsthand the situation here. This possibility has been mentioned directly to the U.S. Department of State and the Department of Interior. Going to the UN isn't ignoring the role of Guam as Guam's administering power, but it does provide another forum in which Guam's issues can be discussed and the U.S. can be reminded of its obligation it has to Guam, obligations that it too easily forgets. Wow. Obligations. Yeah, like during this pandemic time, the way they really turned their back on us and they only gave us $2 billion. Those who are familiar with Guam's history on these issues will recall that coordinated advocacy at the UN and D.C. has happened in the past, sometimes with success and sometimes without. In the 1990s, during the Commonwealth negotiations with the U.S. federal government, the Ada and Gutierrez administrations routinely made trips to the UN to testify as part of their negotiation strategy. We have also seen over the past 10 years that trips to the UN by governors and lieutenant governors to testify and lobby have often resulted in new federal engagement on key issues on Guam. The U.S. already has an established history of ignoring its territories. The UN just provides one more venue in which that amnesia convenience can be combated. Maybe we could call up Pierre and say, can we come to speak to Parliament someday, Pierre? A little consciousness raising north of the border.
I like some citations here on some of these things that the federal government was forced because they testified at the UN.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Pride Month versus the United States Marine Corps. And I already talked about how they stole from our recruiting poster the few, the proud, the Marines. The Marine Corps builds men. All right, I got about 3 minutes till halftime. Just let me take a peek here at Facebook and see who we got. We got Jigo Jarhead, also known as Brandon Foster. We've got Lonnie Salas and Colin Clark, Haffa Gatson, Toto Malik, Toto Baba, Toto Malik Bagune Gatson. Let's see. We've got Brendan Fosto, Living the Dream, Malik, Do or Die. And then Jose comes along and says, I lost that one. I wouldn't be surprised if Aqua goes to Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. Or, well, of course, he's part of the Red Queen's cabinet. And I don't know if you've noticed, but so much of what his stuff said now seems to come across as really pro-administration. It's just a coincidence,
Especially
I'm
this
sure.
dig on Felix Camacho.
Uh-huh. It's sad when the Speaker of the House refuses to pass a bill that protects our justices, just like Guam's Speaker refuses to hold a hearing to lower gas and food prices. Yeah, I think it's actually, I think Therese is blaming it on Joe St. Augustine. I'm not ready to put that on the agenda just yet, Madam Speaker. All right, let's take a break for the big halftime, Joe, and we'll come back to Pride Month versus the USMC.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The January 6th committee goes primetime. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
January 6th was the culmination of an attempted coup.
Committee Chairman Benny Thompson opening a nationally televised hearing about last January's incursion at the Capitol building that included a documentary filmmaker's footage of the chaos and testimony from a Capitol Hill police officer who was wounded. Thompson said then President Trump was at the center of a conspiracy to stop the transfer of power on the day that Congress met to certify the Electoral College results. Indiana Congressman Jim Banks, excluded from the committee by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, says the January 6th committee is deliberately ignoring reports of lax security at the Capitol.
We found serious issues related to how intelligence was gathered, disseminated. The head of the Capitol Police Union told me, he said that they weren't prepared for what happened on January 6th because rank-and-file police officers never received the intelligence that was gathered that said something weeks before January 6th is something bad could happen that day. They weren't equipped for it.
Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed protester, was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer during the incursion. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died of a stroke after returning to his office. 4 other police officers committed suicide in the weeks that followed. The House has so far failed to act on a bill passed by the Senate to extend protection for Supreme Court justices to their families, while protests continue outside the homes of the conservative members of the court. Last night at the home of Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
Just hours after the FBI executed a search warrant at the home of a California man arrested allegedly for plotting to murder Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Nicholas Roski was found outside the justice's home with a pistol, knife, pepper spray, duct tape, and ammunition.
Fox's Kevin Corke reports the suspect had said he was angry about that the court appears to be on the verge of overturning Roe versus Wade. America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
Pete Arredondo, the embattled Uvalde, Texas School District Police Chief, has told the Texas Tribune he didn't consider himself to be the incident commander at the Uvalde Elementary School shooting and assumed someone else was coordinating police response. Arredondo says they needed to try dozens of keys before finding the one that opened the door to the classroom where 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. 3 people killed yesterday at a workplace shooting in Maryland.
Police say a gunman opened fire inside Columbia Machine, a Smithsburg, Maryland company where they make concrete-related products. 3 people killed, another worker hurt. Then that gunman drove off. But Lieutenant Colonel Doffelmeyer of Maryland State Police says troopers hunted him down.
When the troopers went to stop the vehicle, the suspect immediately started firing multiple rounds at the troopers. The troopers returned fire, striking the suspect.
1 officer hurt and hospitalized. That shooter identified as a 23-year-old man from West Virginia, but police aren't saying what they think drove him to kill yet. They did say the gunman and the victims had all worked at that company. Jill Nato, Fox News.
President Biden addressing the 9th Annual Summit of the Americas last night, which the U.S. is hosting this year, telling the leaders gathered in Los Angeles.
We have an opportunity to find ways we can do better for all of our people by working together. And I emphasize together, together. That's what our people expect of us. And it's our duty to show them the power of democracies to deliver when democracies work together.
But Mexico's President López Obrador declined to attend the summit in Belize and Argentina criticized the president for excluding non-democracies from the summit. Labor Department reports on last month's consumer prices a few hours from now. Experts predict they will show inflation is still running at near record highs. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game presented by the Guam Army National Guard goes down Sunday, June 12th at the FD Phoenix Center. The best high school players from both the public and private schools will put their talents on display, coached by the champion coaches. Watch it live at the Phoenix Center or streaming on GuamSportsNetwork.com, powered by IT&E. The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game, June 12th.
Okay, so here we are back after the big halftime show. It's time for the Lou Leon Guerrero show. But before we start the show, I've got Repeat on the line who wants to talk about gender identity. Go for it, Pete.
Hey, Uncle Bob. You know, I have never actually spoken about this issue. I just never made my feelings known about it. But, you know, with everything that's going on, I used to wonder whether or not this phenomenon is exclusive to the human species. But then, you know, I've seen animals that think they're a different animal, you know, like chickens that think they're dogs because they were raised up around dogs, goats that think they're horses, female dogs that think they're male dogs, you know, they start humping other female dogs. So I imagine that it's not unique to the human species, but when we're dealing with the humans and the issues that these things present, right, I look at it this way. You know, I've always lived with the motto of live and let live. And so if someone who was born as a man wants to identify themselves as a woman, I won't force them to say that they're a man and not a woman. But just like I won't force you to say you're not a man, and don't force me to say that you're a woman. So those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. You know, just because they identify as a woman, that doesn't mean that I have to identify them as a woman. So I guess that's how I feel about it is you can think whatever you want, but don't force me to think the same way you do. And I think when we apply that, that would solve the rugby guy situation, right? You may feel like you're a woman, but don't force the rest of the rugby players to believe that you're a woman.
No, but you see, Pete, the way it works is what you said will brand you as a transphobe. Because if you are
No,
not,
because you can be whatever you want, but you can't.
I completely understand, but the woke culture nowadays says that you have to be, if you can't pretend, if you can't go along with something that you know is absolutely wrong, then you're a bad person, and you have to be punished. And that's what transphobia is. If you were to say, if John wants to pretend he's Joan and dress up like Joan and act like Joan and do all that sort of thing, I don't really care. But when John wants to go into the ladies' room, when my teenage daughter is in the ladies' room, no, I won't go along with that. And that would brand me as a transphobe.
Yeah, that's just unfair because, like I said, I'm not going to force you to think how I think. So you shouldn't force me to think how you think.
But that's what it's all about, forcing you to think in a particular... That's what wokeism is, forcing you to think in a particular way that's divorced from reality. It's all now relative truth. And like the article that I read from Walsh, everybody is... If you are really woke, everyone is entitled to his own truth. Well, what's your truth? Well, 2 and 2 is 6 for me. No, it's 5. And that's...
There's another saying, too. You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your facts.
That's true. And I don't even go along with the you're entitled to your opinion, because saying that someone is entitled to his opinion means that I have a responsibility to listen to it, no matter how much of a crackpot opinion it is. Anyhow.
There was a guy a few years ago that was on the news. He had never been to the Philippines. He had never met a Filipino person, but he watched a documentary on the Philippines, and then he identified as Filipino.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, fine. You can do what you want, but don't expect me to think that you're a Filipino, because I grew up around Filipinos. I know what a Filipino is, and you're not it. But if you say you are, that's your truth. That's your reality. I'll let you have that. I won't argue with you. I won't tell you you're wrong. But don't force me to believe that you're Filipino.
Then we had Rachel Dolezal, who is the president of the Spokane, Washington chapter of the National Association of Colored People. And it turns out...
I think there's different motives behind that one.
And it turns out that she was as white as I am. And she even embarrassed her folks, how... And that worked really well. It was okay with everybody except the members of the NAACP. They said, "You're out of here."
Well, there are some expatriates, if you want to call them like that. They do assimilate into a different culture, and that's fine. I respect that. I know a lot of people that have assimilated into a different culture, but this dude that just saw it on TV, has no foundation or basis to say that I've assimilated into the Filipino culture.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, those are just my thoughts. I just think it's getting a little bit too much.
I'll go along with what you say, but you don't use the word a little bit. It's way, way, way too much. Repeat.
All right. Thanks for letting me chime in, Uncle Bob.
Always good talking to you. Okay, and I've got R. James on the line, and after R. James, who wants to talk about, who has a question on the topic, and then after that, Shepard, who wants to talk about humans versus animals. So R. James next. Good afternoon, R. James.
What's going on, Bob? Good Friday afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Sorry it's Friday, though, because, we don't get to do this again until next
week.
Yeah,
we'll live through it.
Well, if somebody wants to identify as a female, like the other caller just said, I'm not going to tell them that they can't. But Aerosmith said it in their song, "Dude looks like a lady." If you want to do that, that's fine. And I'm not going to try to force you to be a man, because most of us other real men or dudes probably don't have very much in common with that. Hey, I'm not going to disenfranchise somebody, I'm definitely not going to treat them badly. Okay, I'm not going to discriminate against them, but like the other caller said, don't try to force your opinion of yourself on me and expect me to actually accept that it's okay to have male genes, male genitalia, male DNA, but then just put on some clothes and say, I feel like a woman today. My grandfather used to say you can put a lipstick and a pink tutu on a pig and you still got a pig, okay? And this is probably not going to be real politically correct, but I also don't believe that there's more than 3 sexes. There's male, there's female, and then there's like the 0.024% of the entire population of the world that's born a hermaphrodite that has both male and female genitalia. Now, these people that are out there that are trying to get everybody on the bandwagon that there's like 6, 7, 8, and however many sexes they say, yeah, I'm sorry, that boat just don't float. Because, look, if everybody was homosexual, if everybody was, LGBTQ, XYZ, whatever, if everybody was a lesbian, it would be the end of our species.
It would.
There would be no such thing as procreation. So, I don't know. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it and think about it for a while.
Okay, R. James. Good points all, as usual. Good talking to you.
See you later, Bob.
Hello. And then we have Shepard. Good afternoon, Shepard. Tell us about humans versus animals.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Bob. Thanks for the halftime show. Once again, invigorating. I was kind of waning there, and as soon as I heard the cannons, I'm ready to go back to work. Put in another hour on the day.
There you go.
Anyways, I'm tuned in here, and 2 callers ago, I'm listening to the guy talk about animals, and some may imitate other animals, or has it do. I'm not sure what the point was. I think the natural order. All we have to do is look to the animals to, and we can learn something, our ever-devolving society. But what our biggest difference from the animal kingdom is the dear Lord gave us humans free will. And so same-sex attraction is a thing. It's always been a thing. It'll always be out there. But as ladies and gentlemen, we have, we don't act on certain things that we're not supposed to act on. And hence we have our Western civilized society. So I don't want to, delve in too much in comparing ourselves to animals. I don't even want to compare us to Europe. People said, well, they do things over there that way. We're Americans, and it took a long time, but our way of life, our society is a culmination of a couple thousand years of, where we are today. Self-governed Western liberalized democracy is the best there is. But anyways, I just thought I'd throw in my 2 cents with the, with the animal kingdom. Let's be nice to them. Let's be kind to them. Let's eat the ones we're supposed to eat and all that, tasty ones. And but I'm not taking my cue from anybody. Anybody with feathers. How about that?
Sounds good to me, Shepard. As usual.
You take it easy, Bob.
Good talking to you, Shepard. Yeah. So
I like how we went from humans versus animals to humans versus Europeans.
Uh-huh. Yeah. A nice parallel, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, and of course, I keep tracing it all back to the Frankfurt School and the cultural Marxism, and creating this confusion, creating this chaos, causing us to doubt all of the truths that we've been so sure of all of our lives as a means of destabilizing our whole society. Western civilization is the enemy. And these little battles are being fought about the death of Western civilization. Antonio Gramsci, the long march through the institutions, etc. So when you have people fighting over whether Rugby Boy can use the girls' bathroom over there at Guam High, they have pretty much succeeded. They've gotten what they're looking for. When you have a superintendent of schools come out and be confronted with the fact that Rugby Boy hurt 3 girls in the rugby game, and his ruling is let her play, we've really got a serious problem. And that's why, this is not the kind of stuff I really like to talk about. But I think it's really necessary to keep coming back to it so that at least our international radio listening audience knows that there is a cadre of people who are still sane that are not going to put up with this stuff. I don't know how many of us there are, but we got to stick to our guns. Next item on the card is Schumer versus Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, but I noticed somebody else wanting to get here in the conversation, and it's none other than our Keith.
Time to inject.
Go ahead, our Keith.
Hi there, Bob. Apologize, been working some long days, but I'm here to interject some daily snark.
Right.
First on this whole business, I really, really do not care what people do in the bedroom, and I think most people fall into that notion. The problem is it's gone well beyond acceptance. It's now you have to like it. You have to like the people who are doing this. And even in some corners, there's this forced, if you don't participate, you're some type of Islerism. I'm reminded of the old, there was an expression years and years ago, back in the politically incorrect days, that said, the love that dares not speak its name now won't shut up about it. The other is just a short little ditty. This is, again, way back in the Cro-Magnon days. I'm pretty woke. I worked with a lady. She was our office administrator, and she was a hoot and a half. She really just called it if she saw it, and be damned if you didn't like it. And there was a guy who I worked with who was just very, let's just say, particular. Maybe he wasn't gay, maybe he wasn't, don't care. But he was definitely a bit of an annoyance. He really just was very nitpicky about things. And there happened to be this one instance when she was being himself. And my office administrator was just going off on him. She just, no. And she goes, and what's with the damn swoosh in the clothing? Is he gay or European? I just can't tell the difference.
If it even matters, right, Keith?
Exactly. But it's just the way she said it, and just the expression has stuck with me for years as just funny. Anyway, you take care and have a good weekend, guys.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, our Keith. Okay, next item on the card is Schumer versus Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. And it's an article that ran again in National Review. In March 2020, on the day that the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a case challenging the constitutionality of a Louisiana law regulating abortion facilities, Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer appeared at a pro-abortion rights rally on the steps of the Supreme Court where he threatened Neil Gorsuch and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Quote, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. On the steps of the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court is in session. He's talking about 2 sitting Supreme Court justices.
And threatens them.
Say again?
And he threatens them.
And he threatens them. Those words are nothing other than a threat. Schumer's decision to target Gorsuch and Kavanaugh by name was so reckless that Chief Justice John Roberts took the unusual step of issuing a statement publicly rebuking a political theater as your leader. Quote, "Justices know that criticism comes with the territory, but threatening statements of this sort from the highest level of government are not only inappropriate, they are dangerous," Roberts said at the time. After Roberts called Schumer's remarks dangerous, Schumer said in a Senate speech, quote, "I should have not have used the words I used yesterday. They didn't come out the way I intended to." Now that a would-be assassin has been arrested outside Kavanaugh's home, and some conservatives have drawn fresh attention to Schumer's reckless rhetoric targeting the justice, New York Magazine's writer Jonathan Chait has published a post contending that Schumer basically said nothing wrong in his March 2020 speech on the steps of the Supreme Court. Chait's defense of Schumer is that, quote, "Schumer was threatening a political response, not a violent response." How could that be okay? You're not supposed to be using any kind of a political threat on a judge. There's supposed to be the apolitical branch.
And there is a law against that, too.
Exactly. Chait does not even acknowledge that Chief Justice Roberts called Schumer's remarks dangerous, nor that Schumer himself said he should not have used those words. When Schumer later tried to clean up his remarks, he said that his point was that there would be political consequences. Political consequences for President Trump and Senator Republicans, and if the Supreme Court, with the newly confirmed justices, stripped away a woman's right to choose. Talk about a revisionist, huh? That's Chucky for you. No one would have been outraged if Schumer had merely said that Trump and Senate Republicans would pay the price in November elections. But Schumer said much more than that. He singled out two sitting Supreme Court justices by name and said to them, "You will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions." Schumer's vague and menacing threat could have meant any number of things, from court packing to baseless smears targeting the justices, to impeachment proceedings, to targeted harassment of Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. Political threats against an independent judiciary are in and of themselves inappropriate. Justices Breyer, Kagan, Sotomayor, echoing the Casey plurality opinion, asserted during the Dobbs oral argument that political pressure to overturn Roe was one reason it must be upheld. No, girls. That's a silly argument. There's political pressure to uphold or overturn any controversial decision, and it shouldn't affect any analysis of what the Constitution does or does not say. But at the very least, all sides can agree that there are forms of political pressure that are wrong. And Schumer's intimidation of Gorsuch and Kavanaugh clearly falls into that category. In fact, Schumer's remarks were more than just inappropriate political pressure. I don't think he was calling for violence, but his vague and menacing rhetoric was not only inappropriate, but dangerous, as Chief Justice Roberts said at the time. Imagine that Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell had appeared on the Supreme Court steps and used Schumer's exact words to threaten Kagan or Sotomayor by name. What would Jonathan Chait have said? What would the mainstream media have said? There would have rightly been howls of protest at the Republicans' leader's dangerous rhetoric. Schumer's March 2020 remarks threatening Gorsuch and Kavanaugh did not directly cause an armed man with a gun, a knife, and a burglary tools to show up outside Brett Kavanaugh's home, but they did contribute to a breakdown of norms under which targeted harassment of sitting Supreme Court justices had previously been acceptable. And there you go, breakdown of norms. That's the object. And, of course, there's one theory that, you know, the Democrats' idea is if we can't control the Supreme Court, let's just trash it because it's not ours. The assassination plot against Kavanaugh is a direct and foreseeable consequence of the May 2 leak of a draft opinion in the Dobbs case. The leak made clear that there was a 5-justice majority willing to overturn Roe, a majority that could be erased by an assassin's bullet before a final ruling was issued. Sounds like something that John Griffin would write. Schumer and two other top Democrats did not condemn the leak, and Schumer lied to the American people about what it would mean to overturn Roe. He said at a May 10 press conference that MAGA Republicans will pass anti-abortion laws with no exception for the life of mother. But every pre-Roe abortion law in all 50 states included such an exception, as does every state abortion law designed to go into effect only if Roe is overturned. Schumer gave his personal blessing to protests outside Supreme Court justices' homes, despite a federal law that prohibits such protests. Dick Durbin, the second-ranking Democrat in the Senate, called the protest reprehensible, and Chait is at least willing to concede that Schumer was wrong here. You can fairly impugn Schumer, whose home is a site of regular protests, for having endorsed the right of protesters to gather outside the homes of Supreme Court justices. Such protests are inevitably threatening to their targets since they provide the perfect cover for an armed nut. But Schumer has not responded to the news that a would-be assassin showed up at Kavanaugh's home with a Glock 17 and other equipment. By telling progressives to cease, he hasn't told them, cease your protests. Asked if Schumer had any statement about the assassination plot against Kavanaugh, Schumer spokesman Justin Goodman told National Review in an email Thursday he is thankful law enforcement arrested this person today. He's been clear that he supports peaceful protests. We once lived in a time when political leaders of both parties would have been expected to universally and forcefully condemn an almost unprecedented assassination attempt against a sitting Supreme Court justice. Schumer's refusal to issue such a condemnation on Thursday was a dangerous abdication of responsibility. His March 2020 remarks targeting Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, his support for protests targeting the residences of Supreme Court justices, and his lies about what overturning Roe would mean are all dangerous. His behavior is an ominous sign for the country. Yeah, when the Senate Majority Leader can comport himself like that and there's not overwhelming outrage everywhere, we're in a heap of trouble. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field and see if it's a little bit more calm there.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
Are you looking for job opportunities? That's perfect. Taiho is a company based in Korea that provides opportunities for people to work at production sites in the United States. They offer a wide variety of jobs that may suit you. Come and check it out. For more information, visit www.gotomainland.com or go to their office at the old iConnect building or call 671-648-9788. What are you waiting for? Go grab that opportunity and fly out to the mainland.
Best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better.
Announcing the point on Alexa.
In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Okay, here we are at Wrigley Field. It's probably okay to walk around Wrigley Field. I don't think Chuck Schumer's been there lately. So I'm down to pretty close to the end of the show, so I'm going to spend a little time talking about the January 6th hearings. And people would ask you, do you remember January 6th? And the correct answer for that is, yeah, that's when gasoline cost $2.19 a gallon, January 6th. That was before Joe Biden. So this is my analysis of what happened. We start out with the understanding that on January 6th, at a joint session of Congress, the electoral votes are counted. Each of the electors meet in the capital of each of the 50 states on, I think it's like December 15th. They cast their ballots. The ballots are then sent to the Vice President of the United States, who is also the President of the Senate. The Senate is called into a joint session on January 6th. At that time, the votes are counted. Any member of either house can challenge a vote. And if there are 2 challenges, then the joint session is recessed until the challenger meets with the members of his own branch of Congress, and they decide what to do with the challenge, whether to sustain it or deny it. They then come back and report it to the President of the Senate. So as an example, if there is a challenge and both the House and Senate sustain the challenge, whatever that electoral vote was doesn't count. So that's the place where you challenge irregularities in elections. And let me take you back to the year 2000, Bush versus Gore. As I'm concerned, Bush versus Gore is right up there with Dred Scott versus Sanford. It's really horrible Supreme Court decisions. The Supreme Court, when a petition for certiorari was filed, the Supreme Court should have denied cert and said, we don't have jurisdiction to deal with this. And the challenge should have been raised on whatever it was in January 6th of the year 2001. In the manner that I just described it. If Barack Obama, for example, and there was a lot of talk, well, he wasn't born in the United States, he's not a native-born citizen. I still haven't ruled completely on that. There's still some things that are pretty suspicious about the whole deal. But that was then, and this is now. But the place that would have been sorted out would have been in that joint session of Congress. That would have been the place to challenge the electoral votes for Barack Obama because he was not a natural-born citizen of the United States. That's the way the system is designed. It's happened before. I can't give you names, but even DiFi did it, I think, in 2006. Democrats have done it maybe 4 or 5 times since 2000. Yeah, it happens. And then, of course, we had the Hayes-Tilden controversy back in 1876, where Tilden had 1 vote short of a majority to be elected president. Hayes, of course, was far shorter. And without going into all of the details, a compromise was reached. Tilden caved in. Rutherford B. Hayes became president. Rutherford B. Hayes, forever after known as Rutherford B. Hayes, or during the time of his presidency, he was known as his fraudulency. And what happened was the Republicans said, we'll pull the Army out of the South. No more Reconstruction. Democrats, you can go ahead and start on your Jim Crow regime. That's what happened. So it's happened before. So if any of this hearing that the Democrats are trying to pull off wants to get you to start thinking this was a coup, this was part of their plan, this was the scheme, they wanted to corrupt the electoral commission, etc. It's just BS, because they did exactly what the Constitution and the Electoral Count Act, an act of Congress, contemplates. Whether or not they were successful, lawyers, when you give a lawyer a problem, he looks at the law and the facts and he tries to figure out a solution for the problem. And if it's a good faith attempt in compliance with Rule 11 of the Rules of Civil Procedure, the fact that it doesn't work doesn't mean that the lawyer is run out of town on a rail. It's what lawyers do. There are no sure things in the law. So, and I know that's a large part of it, this conspiracy to destroy democracy. So let's talk for a minute about the word democracy. Democracy is kind of like a colonizer. Ordinarily, the first person who uses democracy in an argument can claim victory, or democrat. That's not democratic. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, then you win. So democracy comes from 2 Greek words, demo meaning people, cracy meaning government. And democracy was invented, guess where? Greece. In Athens. Athens had the first democracy. And it was a popular democracy, a direct democracy. Everybody in Athens got together, and they had some parliamentary rules, and they enacted laws that way. There were no senators, etc. That was democracy. Well, that works in another example of that kind of democracy is the so-called New England town hall meeting. A lot of the states, especially even the New England states, have very small subunits of government called towns. That doesn't mean city, it doesn't mean village, it means a rural area. Yeah.
They're all square.
And they tend to be square, yeah, because ordinarily there are 36 sections in a town. So every town has its own little government. There's a town board, a constable, on and on. But in New England, they make their laws with a town meeting. Every resident of the town comes to a central location, and that's how they enact their laws. That's democracy. A third form of democracy that we need to discuss is the purest of all forms of democracy. It's called the mob. The mob. Because when it's the mob, the majority of the people, or maybe even a minority, can control without having to deal with any silly rules or regulations or conventions or things like that. So if you've got 300 people that want to burn a building down in Kenosha, and the 300 people start looking for flammable stuff, you go along with it. You voted with the mob. And if that isn't what you want to do, go home. It's the purest form of democracy. And, of course, we're seeing it out in front of Kavanaugh's house right now. So what we had at the Capitol on January 6th was the purest form of democracy. A mob marched to the Capitol, went inside, created some property damage, didn't kill anybody. One of their members was murdered by a Capitol police officer. That nobody wants to talk about that. Did some really stupid things. And, of course, the whole game here is to hang this on Trump. And the way we hang it on Trump is we brand it. What Trump did was a direct attack on our democracy. And we're really lucky that our democracy survived. So let's head for Churchill Downs, and I'll come back and finish this soliloquy.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we are, the home stretch, Churchill Downs. Unfortunately, I only got about 14 more minutes to go this week. I'm going to really make the best of it, descending into sadness at 18:01. Bonnie Suber raised an interesting question on Facebook, and I really like the question, so I'm going to answer it, and then I'll get back to my soliloquy. Bonnie says, what is it? And that is what I asked before, Judge. How does Dr. Oz hold citizenship with Turkey and still serve in their military and hold U.S. citizenship and then be elected to Congress? Well, first answer, as far as Oz is concerned, Oz is a wizard. Where's the real Joe Cruz in there? That's better. Well, here's the law of citizenship as we understand it in the United States right now. An American citizen can be a dual citizen, and to understand how that can occur, we need to talk about the two forms of citizenship. There's jus sanguinis and jus soli. Jus sanguinis means law of the blood. Jus soli means law of the soil. Japan, as an example, is jus sanguinis. If you're Japanese, it doesn't matter where you're born. Japanese, you're Japanese. You'll always be Japanese. Jus soli means you are a citizen of the place where you were born. If you were born in the United States, you are a United States citizen. So, so a person who was born in Turkey, if Turkey is, I don't know which way Turkey goes, who naturalizes in the United States does not have to give up his Turkish citizenship to be a citizen of the United States. And of course, that's really apparent with people who are Brits, because if you're a British subject, you'll always be, there's no way you can never be anything but a British subject. You can stop being an American, but you can't stop being a British subject. So let's say Oz was born in Turkey, emigrated to the United States, well, let's say born in Turkey, grew up in Turkey, served in the Turkish army, came to the United States, naturalized, There's no natural-born requirement for the House or the Senate, only for the presidency. Now, at one time, it was part of our law that if an American citizen ran for public office in a foreign country, or if an American citizen served in a foreign military, he could be decitizenized. But the Supreme Court overruled that. Its holding is if you're born in the United States, it's indelible. So there isn't an inconsistency with Oz being a Turkish citizen, a veteran of the Turkish Armed Forces, and running for U.S. Congress. If Oz were to leave for Turkey now and serve in their armed forces, that might be a little bit of a tougher call. But we have had situations in wartime where American citizens have served with foreign armed forces. Okay, let's get back to my soliloquy. Where did I leave off here? The mob? Yeah. So we had a mob that invaded the Capitol, and my analysis is these hearings that the House is holding now, the purpose of that is to paint Trump with this insurrection brush. First of all, what happened at the Capitol was far, far short of an insurrection. It was a mob and a riot and nothing more than that. So what they want to do is paint Trump with such a black brush that he could never be president again. And how do I know that? They impeached the guy twice, even after he was out of office. Because the impeachment clause says that impeachment can hold a bar to future office. They didn't do that, but they're so afraid of this guy and they hate him so much that they'll twist the Constitution into a pretzel just to get even with him. Now, here's an interesting query for you. What do Gary Francis Powers and Donald Trump have in common?
What do they have in common, Bob?
Gary Francis Powers was a U-2 pilot who was shot down over the Soviet Union in, I think, 1957. He was a civilian at the time. The Soviets took him into custody, treated him very poorly, coerced him into a full confession, and had a show trial. Now, show trial is a term of art. It's one of those where you know the meaning of each word, but when you put them together, it takes on a different meaning. Stalin used show trials to get rid of a lot of his enemies. He'd put them on a public trial with all kinds of trumped-up evidence, none of the safeguards that anyone who goes to a trial gets, convict the person, and then take them out and shoot them. Show trial. That's exactly what the House of Representatives is doing right now. It's a show trial. One would think that any kind of a fact-finding body in the House would have to be bipartisan. But they put two Republicans on, right?
Barely two Republicans.
Yeah, two Republicans. Even the Republicans wouldn't claim. Two Republicans that voted for impeachment. Just no impartiality there at all. Because there's no sense. No one wants to be impartial. They want to, it's like David Lloyd George. Once upon a time, the Prime Minister of Great Britain of the United Kingdom during World War I said, when they were talking about what should be done with Kaiser Wilhelm after World War I, if they won, David Lloyd George says, what we'll do with him, we'll take him out and hang him from a sour apple tree. And that's what they want to do with Trump. They want to hang him from a sour apple tree. And that's the meaning of this whole thing. And they'll make a big fuss over what I'm telling you is a legitimate means to contest an election. Now, what grounds are there to contest the election? I don't buy into a lot of the stuff Trump said. I didn't buy into a lot of the stuff he said when he was president. I don't buy into the Kraken theory and some of the crazy things that lawyers advanced. But I don't remember where I ran across this. But if you took 6 battleground states, each of which were not in compliance with the electors clause of the Constitution, which says the elector, the state, the legislature of the state sets the means for choosing electors. And these 6 battleground states, election commissioners, governors, courts, everybody else made the rules. And they use this COVID dodge. Well, because it's COVID, we got to allow ballot harvesting and mail-in ballot and all the rest of this stuff that if I were in charge, I wouldn't tolerate for a minute. If you want to vote, you come down to the polls and vote or stay home. So 6 battleground states, all of which had that electors clause problem, and had all of them gone the other way, had 40,000 votes in those 6 battleground states gone the other way, Trump would have been elected. Now, I'm not going to use the word fraud, and if fraud is part of your vocabulary, toss it out, because fraud is not a word for lay people. It has a definite meaning. It's not a word that you toss out as a synonym for cheating. But I don't even need to go to that. That whole electors clause thing is enough for me. So that's enough to deal with the whole challenge to the results. As far as the mob and the riot and the rest of that stuff, we know that the mob arrived at the Capitol an hour before Trump finished speaking and an hour before he said, we got to fight for what's right. So my analysis from the get-go was this: that Trump and several members of Congress had planned this challenge during the joint session of the Congress, that Trump wanted to urge his supporters to support them in that challenge, and that's why he had made that speech at that rally, and that's all he intended. It was not intent that they go down there and ruin the furniture and all of that sort of thing. And then, of course, you won't hear anything about the murder of the person who committed a terrible crime, climbing through a window. It's just really, really bad. So this whole thing, to call it smoke and mirrors, gives it more dignity than it really deserved. They've hired a film director type from Hollywood to help them script it and set it up, because it's going to be on primetime TV, right? It is Stalin-esque show trial in order to smash Donald Trump. Well, as far as I'm concerned, for whatever that's worth, it's going to have the exact opposite effect. If they want him out that bad, then I can't think of anybody I'd rather not see in the White House. And, of course, I think he has a really good chance of going back to the White House. Some of my liberal friends who like to who engage in Trump bashing would ask me, would heap these piles of trashing of Trump on my plate and say, how can you support a guy like that? And my answer is, well, let me ask you this. Let's assume everything you're saying is gospel truth. How could such a man ever get elected president of the United States? I'll give you the answer. It's because of the overreach of the left. So if it's the overreach of the left and everything we talk about every day, the wokeism and the whole thing, I'll take Donald Trump anytime with bells on. Okay, we're down about to the end of the... I'm going to quit talking about Trump and talk about the incumbent next. Yeah, I have this visual aid here that I use to remind me about the current president of the United States. That's right there. How much time we got left, Jose? 10 seconds? Yeah, so... Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. Jose and I will be back on Monday. We're going to miss you all tremendously. So we'll see you on Monday at 1600. But until that time, let's go, Brandon.
is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another new record. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The average price for a gallon of gas in the U.S. reaches $4.98.6 this morning, according to the AAA. That's up 21 cents in a week, more than 50 cents higher than a month ago. This on the day the Labor Department will report consumer prices for last month, expected to be more than 8% higher than they were last May. Speaker Pelosi's handpicked January 6th committee investigating last year's incursion at the U.S. Capitol building, delivering a 2-hour report on national television last night, blaming former President Trump for it.
Donald Trump, the President of the United States, spurred a mob of domestic enemies of the Constitution to march down the Capitol and subvert American democracy.
Committee Chairman, Mississippi Democrat Benny Thompson. Many Republicans have called the Select Committee investigation a sham, pointing out every member of the committee previously voted to impeach then-President Trump. New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik.
This is a partisan witch hunt. It has been that from the beginning. This is about punishing Nancy Pelosi's political opponents.
More committee hearings are scheduled for next week. Earlier, the House approved a gun control measure.
House lawmakers heard horror stories Wednesday about the mass shooting at a school in Uvalde, Texas, from a doctor who rushed to the scene, from parents as well as a fourth-grade survivor. Soon after, they passed the Protecting Our Kids Act. It would raise the age limit for semi-automatic rifle purchases and limit the capacity of ammunition magazines. The bill passed mostly on party lines as Democrats like Congressman Jerry Nadler argued,
Americans are watching. They are begging us to protect them and their loved ones from gun violence.
Republican Jim Jordan pushed back.
What this bill does is take away Second Amendment rights, God-given